Questions 13, 14, and 15 are part of a set. So I'm just going to talk about all three of these together. So what's going on in this problem is we are looking at two different polls. One of the poll had 7,700 people and the other poll had 19,600. So your sample size is the only thing that affects your margin of error. So the formula for the margin of error is 1 divided by the square root of the sample size. That's just a formula that you need to be able to use, identify, and apply. So whatever our sample size is, let's say it was 1,200, then the margin of error would be 1 divided by the square root of that sample size for whatever the sample size is. When you read the problem, it will very explicitly tell you how many people they included in the study. In this case, it's how many voters. So both problems identify how many voters. That's your sample size. That's your how many. So, I'm making up a number here, but let's say that the sample size, they included 1,200 voters. You'll need to do the problems in the homework. But how you would do this is you would do 1 divided by, and go ahead and get the square root of 1,200 on your calculator. So here for this problem, I use 4 decimal places, so 34.6410. And then I do 1 divided by that number to get the margin of error. So here it's 0.289 or 0.0289. You can do this as a decimal or as a percent. So in this particular case, you are going to be using percent. So make sure you take your answer and multiply by 100 to get from decimal to percent. Now, if you had a bigger sample size, is much smaller. Our margin of error, this is how, that range that we feel like the real value's in. Margin of error is just saying, okay, I have this estimate, I know it's not perfect, but I'm pretty sure it's within this range. So whatever our sample result was, which in this case for part A was 74%. Well, here we're saying, okay, we got 74%, but you can go down 3% and up 3%. We're pretty sure that the answer is somewhere in that range. When you take a larger sample, so let's say we had maybe 12,000 people in our sample, we would do the same thing, we just have a bigger sample size. So we would first do the square root of 12,000, and that gives us 109.5445, and then 1 divided by that number. And we had to do this in 2 steps because your calculator tends not to handle the order of operations perfectly. So if we can help out our calculator a little bit, that makes a big difference in our final answer. And so here, we've got our decimal, but we need to turn this into a percent. So we multiply by 100, and so we get 0.91%. So you notice, so you're not nearly as uncertain. Here, I think the value was 77%. Here, we only need to go 0.9% in both directions. So we're going to have a whole lot less variability in our responses. So that's how you get your margin of error. It's just that formula. You just need to identify how many were included in the sample. But for part C, what you're trying to answer is which snapshot seems to more accurately reflect the views of his constituents. And bottom line, if you include a greater number of people in your sample, then you're going to get a better result. You'll have a more accurate result the more people that you include. So it's just about the number of constituents that are in your sample. I realized after the recording that I forgot number 16 was also part of this series. So I'm adding this, so the video is actually going to be 13 through 16. But the last question was, look at what happens when you reword a question. The original question was, I believe this is a matter of conscience, and the views of my electorate should supersede my own. Then on the other statement, we changed the wording to say, I would encourage everyone in the Central West who thinks that women should be able to go to the doctor with privacy and without interference to support the poll and encourage Mr. Donato to vote for the bill. Now, That statement by Penny Sharp, that second one where we're talking about, should women have the, privacy and without interference, all of those words are going to encourage more people to support the bill. Um, because you're using these highly emotional words, words that are going to change people's opinion. If you just ask for someone's opinion, whereas Philip Donato just is asking for the opinion, he wants to know what people think so that he can do the right thing for his constituents. He wasn't influencing the people's behavior. He just was asking so that he could get some information. But with Penny Sharp making this very strongly emotionally filled statement, um, then you're going to affect your outcome because you are changing people's views in the question that you're asking. And so here, your poll will end up being less accurate because you've reworded and you've encouraged more people to support the bill.